got to know what you want to do. The other thing that happens when you're at a state of peace is that you access your prefrontal cortex. As you access that, you have a better discernment and decision-making because you're not as in a state of fight or flight, survival, them, me, kill, be killed.
Welcome to the Contrarian Capitalist Podcast, the ultimate destination for accredited investors and entrepreneurs seeking alternative wealth building strategies. Discover how to fast track your journey to wealth and time freedom by thinking outside the box. If you're ready to join the ranks of the Contrarian Capitalists and learn the most effective ways to reach your financial goals faster, you're in the right place. Let's get started with today's episode of the Contrarian Capitalist Podcast.
Thank you for joining another episode of the Contrarian Capitalist Podcast. I'm your host and your favorite silverback, Sylvania Harrod. And on today's episode, I'm going to give you one of the best pieces of advice I learned from one of my mentors many years ago, is that you will never worry yourself into a better situation. Now, why am I talking about worrying yourself and things to be able to go there? Well, the reality is the only difference between who you are today and who you are to become is going to be, because we always live in the residual of our thoughts, beliefs, and actions. So if that is to be true, and we live in the residual of those, the biggest difference is that life's going to keep moving. Things are going to keep happening, but your experience of those situations will determine exactly how it feels. I'll give you a prime example. So I grew up like driving cars fast and being able to do things, going around tracks and all that kind of experience to be able to be there. And being that I was raised in the New York City area, I was used to like New Jersey drivers. New Jersey drivers historically known for like, you'll get past in this, if you're in the middle or the slow lane by a school bus doing 20 miles per hour over the speed limit. The speed limit is the minimum effective dose to move. Like, please get out of my way. So like people will fly past you, different things to be able to go there. And when I first started driving, it was a stick shift in New York City rush hour traffic. And if you don't know about New York City rush hour traffic, that stuff can be brutal. People are cursing at you, yelling at you, honking at you, constantly be able to beeping. And I'm in a stick shift and there's different hills and the car will stall out and be able to do things. And I just go, oh my goodness. But at the time, it was time for me to learn how to drive. That was a driving lesson right there. Into the storm I went. And afterwards, I was really upset and I was really frustrated at that process. Well, here I am, 20 plus years later. And anytime I go into a city, nothing phases. I'm like, okay, cool. People curse at me, they're going to curse. People yell at you, they're going to yell. People are going to do things, they're going to do things. I'm unbothered because I've already been conditioned. If you've been in a place, things are really, really hard. Everything after that seems like cupcakes and rainbows and unicorn kisses. And so when I think about that and I think about those experiences, I just realize that like, there's only so much you can really control. You hear the arbitrary terms about like, focus on what you can control. But putting it into actually execution is a whole nother thing. Because if you look at it in life, like we're contrarians. So naturally, what we want to do is we like to think outside the box and see if we can be able to move needles. But there's a term I want you to understand. And I learned this from my coach in CrossFit. It's called the minimum effective dose. If you listen to other episodes, I've mentioned it before, but I'm mentioning it constantly because guess what? There's probably new people listening today. The minimum effective dose is based upon what, like after gathering lots and lots of data, what is the minimum amount you need to do to ensure you're going to be able to consistently gain a return? And so that is for you as an individual, the amount of work you need to do to keep the ball moving forward. Because if you have a 1% increase per day, you can constantly do that without hitting a point of burnout. But the problem is that we're wired to think we need to do 10% today, 15% tomorrow, 20% the next day, 7% the other day, 13% the other day. But the reality is that you only get to 100% because you burnt out after 5-6 weeks. But if I do 1% of change per day over the course of a year, I have a 365% increase. And I'm consistently chipping away and chipping away and chipping away. Over the course of 3 years, is 1,000% increase. In the course of 6 years, 2,000%. 9 years, 3,000%. Versus the merry-go-round of going up and down, up and down, up and down, up and down through the entire process, thinking that you're actually moving forward because you try to control everything. The universe is going to universe with or without you. The only constant in life is change. So if things are constantly changing and things are constantly in motion, what you can do is you can enjoy the ride, or you can sit there and criticize the ride and try to control the ride. Be like, the seat's so uncomfortable, we don't do this. Why are you driving this way to be able to go through there? And you realize you're just creating a miserable experience the entire time. And I've watched people that are high performers and high achieving. They think that there's going to be winners, there's going to be losers. I'm going to leave people in my wake and be able to go through that. You can do that. It's going to suck. It's kind of like the story of the old lumberjack and the young lumberjack. The old lumberjack goes there and the young lumberjack's like, I'm better than you. You're 25 years my senior. You're too old. You're too slow. I'm going to challenge you to a race tomorrow of who can chop the most wood. So next day they show up. They go through the process. Old lumberjack, like an hour in, takes a break. Young lumberjack looks at him. He's like, he's taking a break. Suck him. I'm going to beat them. Then he realized, like every hour, the old lumberjack would take a break. Then came lunchtime. Lunchtime comes. The old lumberjack's like, I'll see you in 30 minutes. Be able to go to. He's like, you're taking a lunch break? Such a slacker. So comes back from lunch, gets back to work. The young lumberjack goes through and be able to do through the entire time. And at the end of the day, they go to measure the results. And the young lumberjack realizes the old lumberjack has twice the amount of wood chop that he possibly has. And the young lumberjack can't understand it. He's like, how? How is it possible? You took a break for 10 minutes every hour, and then you took a 30-minute lunch break. And by the end of the day, you've doubled my output to be able to be there. And so the old lumberjack goes, yeah. How? He said, you thought I was taking breaks, but what I was actually doing was sharpening my saw. Same thing in life. The times of sharpening your saw just means that you're making more efficient cuts. You have better cuts. So the number of chops it takes you to chop down the wood is actually going to be less. So he's still moving and having constant motion, but his effectiveness and efficiency is double. Just the guy who didn't want to take a break, didn't want to stop, did not want to eat, because he also may not realize that his swings are actually going to be drastically decreased by the end of the day because he's exhausted and he hasn't refueled himself and he's tired. But through sheer will and drive and determination, I'm going to beat people. I don't know about y'all, but I appreciate the young lumberjack theory of life. I take breaks. I take time. I go through. I sharpen my saw. I spend an hour every day learning at minimum. Because I know in 3 years, I'm going to be at 1,000%. 1% a day of moving around and doing it and looking at it. I move my body. I'm going to move it today. Take a quick break, lift, be able to move around, stretch, chug a bunch of water during that period of time. I'm going to go make it happen. Because I understand the minimum effective dose and what the outputs I'm looking to do. And that's my barometer. And I know that the pictures you see behind me are people that I care about, and they're going to get my time. Because the reality is, I don't know how many years I have on this planet. I don't know. But I do know how my eulogy is going to be written, because I've already written it on purpose. So I know what my North Star is, so I don't lose my way. So you have an option. In life, you can white knuckle things. You can hold it close and be able to do things and feel like you're the macho man. If you want to. That's cool. Or you can go with the current and let it guide you and have it be there while just adjusting the rudders a little bit in the boat of life to get you where you need to go. And the experience can be very jovial and peaceful for a majority of it. Doesn't mean there isn't going to be any suck, because that's the balance of life. There's going to be different moments of suck. But you got to know what you want to do. The other thing that happens when you're at a state of peace is that you access your prefrontal cortex. As you access that, you have a better discernment and decision making, because you're not as in a state of fight or flight, survival, them, me, kill, be killed. And as you're doing that, you now have the opportunity to really see what is there for you. So how does this apply to us as contrarians who are looking at building alternative wealth strategies? It's simple. You look at what I said for that little piece of that 1% consistently over time. You go ahead and you identify like what properties or assets or things you want to invest into, because you're really looking to get into capital markets. So as you go through that process and as you go through the private capital markets, you got to realize, I'm going to tell you something because I had to learn this the hard way. It is much better to be on the capital side of the equation than be on the operator side, because wealth management is based upon, I want to go through and buy rights to revenue. So if I look at a practical thing like a fix and flip, I would much rather be the private capital partner than the actual operator. I'm going to get a return on my money, and I'm going to have the ability to still gain equity over a period of time inside of an asset without having to deal with anything related to the day-by-day management or operations of that actual asset. Because I don't want a living soul texting me or asking me. I'd much rather invest into funds and syndications. Because as I invest into different funds and syndications, I know what they're going to do. They're going to send me a check at certain periods of time, so that therefore, if the asset performs, it performs. But I believe in diversification and making sure that I have multiple rights to revenue, because eventually I'm going to have a man-made lake of my own capital that I have consistently in, but I'm going to have multiple inlet sources that happen to be there. And you may choose at a certain moment that career that you're currently in or business you're currently in has met its necessary requirements and it has lived its life. And that is the gift I choose to deliver to you. You get to make the choice. You get to understand that, but you first must be aware of exactly what you want and how you're living. The experience of life can be a jovial one. It doesn't also have to be like command and conquer, dominate, and be able to do things. That's fine. Your experience is your experience. Who am I to hell to tell you what to write on your book or your chapter, on what page and what chapter in that book of your own life? I'm just here to give guidance. And if you take it, great. If you take 2% of it, great. I know where I'm going to be. So I leave you with that. That's my objective in Land the Plane, is to understand, really. Ask yourself. And if you don't know the answer, ask those that are around you, especially the ones that you're actually resisting asking, because they're going to tell you the truth. As always, you can find me on all social media platforms at first name Sylvania, last name Harrod. And I really enjoy these conversations and these moments to be together, because I look at the community that I'm going to build and foster, where there's just my fellow contrarians around the world that are out there having fun and enjoying what they want to do. So as always, have fun, my friends. Be grateful and enjoy life. Cheers.